The thing that really shocks me about this story, you know, Disney and all these media companies, they invest hundreds of millions of dollars into these projects, right?
Dude, you are not ready for this. So remember all the drama around Rachel Zegler and Disney's Snow White? The interviews, the backlash, the total meltdown online? Yeah, turns out that was just the beginning. Because now, out of nowhere, this second version of the movie is making the rounds. A version that Disney supposedly buried. A version that cuts Zegler down, flips the script, and actually tries to be faithful to the original fairy tale.
Have they ever thought about maybe like a little bit of like, I don't know, vulnerability study, opposition research, that sort of thing, before you go and hire some Zoomer who's a lunatic?
And here's the kicker. Some people think Rachel herself might have leaked it. I know, it sounds insane, but with everything we've seen lately, it actually makes sense. The timing, the silence, the cryptic posts, it's all pointing to something way bigger happening behind the scenes. And if even half of what's being said is true, this isn't just a leak, it's a full-blown exposé. Disney's scrambling, Zegler's distancing, and fans? They want answers. Let's get into what really went down, because this story might just change everything. So here's where things start getting really strange. According to multiple online rumors and at least 2 alleged leaks from inside the studio, there's a second cut of Snow White floating around.
He gave the ladder.
Yeah, he got his money in Hollywood, and now he's like, don't
nicely
hire
done,
anyone
Smug.
else.
The ladder.
That was nicely done.
No, but I mean, he got his money acting as a little person. Now he's saying it's demeaning for them to have those roles.
Not the version that bombed in test screenings or made headlines for its modern update. No, this cut is completely different. We're talking about a version that supposedly brought back the traditional 7 dwarves, one that leaned into the classic fairy tale vibe.
So no prince or a different kind of prince?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie, right. Andrew Burnap, great dude.
With fewer political overtones and way less of the independent princess who doesn't need a prince messaging. And guess who was reportedly not the center of it anymore? Yeah, Rachel Zegler. According to one anonymous production assistant on a podcast, this version was toned down specifically because of Zegler's polarizing press run. Her scenes were allegedly restructured, trimmed, or outright reshot in favor of a more ensemble-style story. So, why didn't this version make it to theaters?
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story. With a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
Insiders claim Disney panicked. Executives thought the classic cut was too traditional, too safe, and wouldn't appeal to Gen Z audiences. They doubled down on the modern version instead. And, well, we all saw how that went. But now that this alternate version has reportedly leaked, whether fully or in chunks, people are starting to ask.
And then they had to hire a special media consultant for her to follow her around all the time and make sure she didn't continue shitting on Snow White and the prince and young love and women who want to get married and Steven Spielberg, the executive producer of her previous movie, and white people who she claims wanted to know if she was really a Latina on her first movie.
Was this the movie Disney should have released all along? And more importantly, did Rachel Zegler herself push to leak it? Because if she did, it changes everything. And that's not even the craziest part. Because next, we're diving into the full-blown war between Zegler and Disney behind closed doors. At first, Disney tried to act like everything was fine. But behind the scenes, it was chaos. Rachel Zegler's press tour for Snow White went from awkward to downright disastrous. Instead of hyping the film, she seemed to roast the original.
It's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows?
Calling the 1937 classic weird, brushing off the prince as a stalker, and flat out saying Snow White didn't need saving. It was meant to sound empowering, but it blew up in Disney's face. Longtime fans were furious. Even casual viewers were confused. And suddenly, Zegler wasn't just the star. She was the face of the backlash. Sources close to the studio say Disney execs were furious behind closed doors.
They flew an executive, one of the producers, out to go visit personally with Rachel Zegler to say, could you please take that down? Because we understand you can have your political views, but those aren't really helpful while you're trying to build an audience for a movie. Maybe you could save them for like your diary and your friends, but like maybe not, maybe just take the tweet down.
One alleged internal memo even claimed the marketing team was in scramble mode trying to soften the blow from Zegler's interviews. But it was too late. The internet had already turned. That's when things allegedly got even worse. Insiders claim Zegler clashed directly with the studio over how she was being portrayed in press. She supposedly felt like Disney had left her out to dry, taking all the heat while they stayed silent. And according to one leak, there was a closed-door confrontation between Zegler and top-level Disney execs. She reportedly demanded changes, edits, damage control. When those demands were ignored, that's when the leaks started. Some fans believe Zegler, or someone on her team...
They've been in a full meltdown about this girl for a couple of years now, and how they had her tweet out like a little, "Yay, Snow White, can't wait, so excited, I love to play her." And she did it and got like millions of views, and they were like, "Good job, Rachel." And then she, like minutes later, followed it up with, "And never forget, free Palestine."
Leaked parts of the second cut as a warning shot, a way of saying, if I'm going down, I'm not going alone. And that theory? It's gaining traction fast. Because what happened next made everything even messier. Because once the leak hit the internet, the fan base completely erupted. The moment word got out about a second cut, whether it was real or not, the internet exploded. Reddit threads lit up like wildfire. Twitter was flooded with hashtags like "Release the classic cut" and "Zegler was right," while others posted clips calling her the worst Disney casting of all time. It didn't matter if the leak was legit. Everyone had an opinion. Some fans rallied behind the leaked version, saying it's exactly what the movie should have been from the start. They accused Disney of sabotaging itself with unnecessary rewrites and modern updates that nobody asked for. Others? They doubled down on the backlash against Zegler, blaming her entirely for the film's collapse. One viral post even read, "She disrespected the source material, the fans, and the studio. And now she's trying to act like the victim?" Even Zegler's most loyal defenders started to go quiet. Fan accounts that once celebrated her casting suddenly switched to posting side-by-side comparisons of scenes allegedly altered in the classic cut. And of course...
Isn't this the one where they actually took the dwarves out of the 7 dwarves?
Yes, we have CGI dwarves now.
Okay, yeah, because little people didn't need jobs either.
Because Peter Dinklage wanted the whole field to himself. Went out there and was like,
the ladder down
"This
behind
is
him."
insulting, unless it's me."
Peter Dinklage's name came roaring back into the conversation. Some fans blamed his controversial comments from years ago as the reason Disney overhauled the dwarves in the first place, saying that his criticism kicked off the creative mess that eventually turned Snow White into a PR nightmare. YouTube creators and film analysts started dissecting every frame, every leaked screenshot, and every cryptic social media post from Zegler. Fan theories spiraled into full-on investigative threads, and with no official confirmation from Disney or Zegler, the silence only fueled the fire. But here's where it gets even crazier.
And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
Because while fans were debating the leak online, Disney executives were in full-blown panic mode behind the scenes. While the internet was spiraling, things inside Disney were somehow even worse. According to multiple insiders, the studio was thrown into a full-on emergency response mode. Internal memos allegedly circulated, calling the Snow White situation a reputational threat and instructing teams to halt all non-essential marketing immediately. Behind closed doors, high-level meetings turned into blame games. The writers blamed the marketing team, the marketers blamed the cast, and execs, they just wanted the whole thing to disappear. Rumors started surfacing that Disney was secretly pulling Snow White merchandise from store shelves. One anonymous employee claimed warehouses were sitting on pallets of dolls and promo items that would never be released. Retail partners were allegedly told to hold inventory without explanation.
And to everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her.
And then came the most explosive claim yet. Executives were now openly discussing the possibility of distancing the film from Zegler altogether. One leak suggested they were reviewing international marketing strategies that downplayed her role, replacing her with ensemble shots or CGI-heavy clips. Another report hinted at emergency re-edits, reshaping the narrative to make it feel less like Zegler's movie and more like a group story. Internally, it was described as a brand preservation operation, not even about saving the movie anymore, just about containing the damage. And what's worse, there were whispers that Disney was reconsidering its entire live-action strategy, all because of how badly Snow White blew up in their faces. But they weren't done yet, because the next move might have been the most brutal of all. Some fans started noticing something weird in the trailers, and once they compared old footage to the new edits, one question was on everyone's mind. Did Disney just cut Rachel Zegler out of her own movie? Fans were the first to notice it. Something wasn't adding up. In earlier trailers, Rachel Zegler was everywhere. Hero shots, monologues, even scenes teasing major emotional moments. But in the most recent promos, she was suddenly barely there. Her face shows up for half a second, maybe a quick glance, then gone. Instead, Disney leaned hard into sweeping CGI shots, fantasy creatures, and ensemble sequences with the supporting cast. It didn't take long for fans to put two and two together. Had Disney started editing her out of her own movie? One viral breakdown compared the first teaser to the newest international trailer, and in multiple spots, Zegler's scenes were either cropped, cut, or replaced with visual effects. Entire lines of dialogue vanished. Her most quoted moment from the first teaser, "She's not going to be saved by a prince," completely erased. Coincidence? Highly doubtful. Inside sources claimed reshoots took place late last year, and while Disney kept quiet about why, industry insiders now believe those edits were done to minimize Zegler's screen time, and it doesn't stop there. According to a now-deleted Reddit AMA by someone claiming to work on localization, international versions of the film may be getting a soft rewrite, altering certain lines, even changing marketing to focus on the magical world rather than the character of Snow White herself. Even wilder? A source close to post-production claimed Disney floated the idea of rebranding the movie entirely, shifting it from Snow White to something more ensemble-driven. Think, The Enchanted Kingdom or The Forest of Dreams, a title where Snow White is just one character in the mix. So was this a strategic pivot or a total betrayal? Because from what fans can see, it looks like Disney might be trying to erase Zegler to save the film. But if that's true, where does that leave Rachel? Because she hasn't been silent. Not completely, and what she posted next sent the internet into another frenzy. After weeks of silence and chaos swirling around her name, Rachel Zegler finally broke the silence. But instead of an interview or press statement, she dropped a cryptic Instagram story. Just a plain black background with the words, "Some stories need to be told the right way." No context, no explanation, just that. And just like that, speculation exploded again. Was she talking about Snow White? Was she confirming the leaked second cut? Or was this her way of saying she never got to tell the version she believed in? Meanwhile, Disney tightened up like Fort Knox. Multiple insiders say the studio launched an internal probe to trace the leak, with some sources even claiming legal threats were issued to current and former crew suspected of disclosing unreleased content. And get this, one anonymous whistleblower on an industry podcast hinted that the second cut is real and still exists. He said, "It's not some fan edit. It was real. It was screened. It was finished. They just buried it." At the same time, rumors began swirling that Disney has blacklisted further projects featuring Zegler, quietly shelving future collaborations and removing her name from internal casting discussions. But here's the twist. Despite all this chaos, some execs are reportedly worried about going too far. The studio knows it risks being accused of scapegoating a young actress, especially in the era of cancel culture and online outrage. So now they're stuck in limbo. They can't fully cut ties, but they don't want her associated with their brand either. And Rachel? She's walking a PR tightrope trying to avoid burning bridges while hinting she's not the villain in this story. But no matter how they spin it, the real damage is already done. Because behind all of this is a bigger question. A growing fear inside Disney and the industry. Did Snow White just kill the live-action remake trend for good? At this point, it's not just about Snow White. It's about something much bigger. Because after this disaster, insiders say Disney is quietly rethinking everything. The entire live-action remake strategy, the billion-dollar engine behind recent hits like Aladdin and The Lion King, is now under intense scrutiny. And it's not just speculation. According to multiple reports, the highly anticipated live-action Tangled remake was suddenly placed on indefinite hold, right after the Snow White backlash peaked. Coincidence? Not likely. Audiences aren't just burned out on reboots, they're flat out rejecting them when they feel manufactured, soulless, or overloaded with agendas. It's no longer just fatigue, it's rebellion. And Snow White didn't just stumble, it became the poster child for everything fans are tired of. It had all the warning signs. A controversial lead whose offhand comments set the internet on fire. A script that completely abandoned the heart of the original in favor of a tone that felt unrecognizable. A wave of public backlash so massive it sparked online boycotts before the movie was even finished. And now, a leaked alternate cut, a version rumored to be more faithful, less correct, and closer to what fans actually wanted all along. Insiders say this second cut is quietly making the rounds among higher-ups, and it's reportedly creating chaos behind the scenes. Some execs are furious it exists at all. Others are wondering if burying the original vision was the real mistake. Disney's top brass are now in crisis mode. There are serious conversations happening about scaling back on the modern messaging, about restoring some of the traditional magic that built the empire in the first place. Because here's the reality. When your core audience starts walking away in disgust, it doesn't just hurt a film's numbers, it shatters brand loyalty. And for Disney, brand loyalty is everything. Even former executives, people who once helped shape the current direction, are quietly admitting behind closed doors that Snow White might have been the final straw, a moment of reckoning, a warning sign that Disney's obsession with reinvention has finally crossed a line. They're calling for a return to what made Disney, authentic storytelling, timeless themes, nostalgia that doesn't feel like it was run through a corporate filter, characters people recognize and actually want to root for. And all of that brings us back to Rachel Zegler. At one point, she was being groomed as the face of a new Disney era, a bold Gen Z princess ready to lead the brand into the future. But now, her star is flickering, fast. Insiders are calling her a risky hire. Some casting directors have allegedly started pulling her name from shortlists, afraid her involvement could sink upcoming projects before they even launch. Behind the scenes, Zegler has gone from being a key part of Disney's marketing machine to being nearly invisible. She's been quietly removed from trailers, pulled from promotional campaigns, and, according to some sources, even discussed in internal legal memos over the fallout. In just a matter of months, she went from being hailed as Disney's next big thing to being whispered about as a PR liability. So now, the question isn't just, what happened to Snow White? It's far bigger than that. What's left of Disney's magic, if audiences no longer trust the fairy tale? Because when this studio, the studio that defined childhood for generations, starts flinching this hard and reconsidering everything, it usually means something massive is about to shift. And if Snow White really was the breaking point, then we may be looking at the end of Disney's current era and the beginning of something radically different. So, what really happened here? Was this so-called second cut just another internet myth? A fan-fueled fantasy that spiraled out of control? Or was it something very real? A version of Snow White that Disney deliberately buried because it didn't match the image they were desperate to project? A version that might have been truer to the source material? A version that didn't rely on controversial rewrites or polarizing messaging? A version that might have actually worked? And if Rachel Zegler did leak it, whether out of frustration, revenge, or a calculated bid to reclaim control over a spiraling narrative, then let's be honest, this wasn't just a bold move, it was a chess move. A defiant checkmate against the very studio that cast her, and then, some say, cut her loose. Because either way you slice it, the damage is already done. Disney's image as the untouchable, family-friendly fairy tale machine, cracked. Zegler's bright-eyed princess debut, tainted. And the audience? We're left in the dark, caught between dueling narratives, buried edits, and a mounting suspicion that what we were shown wasn't the full story. This wasn't just a box office disaster. This was a cultural implosion, a star going rogue, a studio scrambling to control the narrative, and a version of Snow White the public was never meant to see. But maybe now, it's too late to hide it. Because if the leaked cut is real, if it truly exists, locked away in some Disney vault, then this might be one of the most revealing moments in modern Hollywood. A moment where a fairy tale turns into a scandal, where a lead actress becomes the whistleblower, and where fans for once hold more power than the studio itself. So now we turn it over to you. Do you believe the second cut actually exists? Was Rachel Zegler fighting for the version Disney should have released, or just trying to rewrite her own ending? And if Disney really is pulling back on remakes after this disaster, are we watching the final chapter of the live-action fairy tale era? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear it all. Because with all the leaks, the drama, and the silent wars behind the scenes, one thing's clear. This story isn't over. Not even close. In fact, it might just be getting started.